Okay, this one's for Gabby.
I'd like to welcome you all here this morning to this service. My name is Kevin Amery and I am one of the elders in this church. So we come here today to say farewell to Gwendoline Eckley and to show our support to her family in this time of loss and grief. We come also to give thanks for the life of Gwen and for the love that she shared with her family and friends. Days such as today are a reminder that grief is the price we pay for loving someone who is close to us. We can draw comfort from the words of Jesus spoken long ago when he said, "Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted." So my wish and my prayer today is that in the coming days of grief and loss, that comfort will come from good memories and things that we have learnt from the life of our loved one. So I'd like to hand over now to Suzanne, who will share some of Gwen's life.
Our mother, Gwen Eckley, was born on the 26th of June 1929 to parents John Buller, better known as Jack, and Christina Gild Anderson, or Chrissy Buller. Gwen was the eldest daughter of the eldest daughter, and also the oldest cousin to many of you here today. She survived breast cancer and bowel cancer, but still managed to outlive every family member. No other member of the Anderson clan has made it to this record age of 94 years. I'm sure her mother, who passed away at 38, would be very proud. Gwen loved horses, playing the piano, hence the Chopin, riding horses, getting dressed up to go to town or out, as did the whole family. Did I mention horses? Gwen was riding horses from a very young age, and while I was looking through photos recently, I found one of a very young Gwen and her sister Margaret riding bareback together with just a bridle. Gwen looked no older than 5, if that. She even rode her horse to school, as did many children at the time. Gwen rode her horses in many local shows, and I have heard that she and some of her friends travelled with their horses on the train to ride in the Sydney Royal Easter Show. Horses I have heard her talk about are Peter, Saladin, Roy, Taffy, Heather, Smokey and Lucky, who was used for riding and pulling the sulky. Most have found a spot in the booklet you are holding. No Anglicare worker, physiotherapist or nurse ever came into Mum's house without hearing about the antics of Gwen and Taffy. Always amazed about how she rode him to school and how they did everything together. They especially enjoyed that story about riding Taffy through a house, which I believe was that of her grandparents. Gwen studied piano to LMSA, or Licentiate in Music Australia, which is a diploma awarded by examination to outstanding students in musical performance. Moira Buller said that she was a superb pianist, the best. She was also a talented knitter and dressmaker and created so many beautifully embroidered or fancy worked doilies and tablecloths while listening to the radio with her family in the evenings. Along with horses, Gwen loved her cows. She would milk and care for them in rain, hail or shine, on frosty mornings and all night if they were not well. She walked them to only the most carefully selected bulls when it was called for. I have heard that she phoned and asked another person whom Dad was with at the time, and I can't remember if it was Johnny Buller or Max Cruz, to break the news to him so that he would not get a shock when he arrived home to find that the cows had broken into his corn crop and devoured the lot. Nick was not happy. Brom Buller always remembered how in tune she was with her animals. Mum's brother John kept some of her cows at the Murrumai Farm cow paddock. On many occasions, when they were ready to calve, Gwen would phone her brother and say such things as, "I dreamt Rosie," or whatever that particular cow's name was, "gave birth last night." And John would say, "I'll go check and I'll call you back." And Gwen was always right. One time in particular, Mum rang John to tell him that Bronwyn and Andrew were not to go into the cow paddock, as she had dreamed that one of the cattle would charge at them. John assured Gwen that he would not allow the children anywhere near the cows. Bronwyn also remembers that every time they drove into town, John would always blow the car horn as they passed our house and always call in to see his sister on the way home. They were very close. The whole family was very close and spent a great deal of time together from when they were tiny. Because of the closeness in age between Gwen, her sister Margaret, and three of their aunties, Ellen, Winnie and Beatty, they were quite a tight team. When I put out a call for stories about Gwen, I was sent 4 versions of this one. This version was told by Stuart Anderson to his daughter Libby, but there was actually very little variation between all the tellings. Stuart, who was around the same age as the 5 girls, was watering the Leeton paddock, so the big irrigation pump was going. The pump spilled into a high-wall concrete pool that made a great swimming hole. The grandparents, or parents, had visitors, so the younger girls, mentioned earlier, were told to go out and play. They stripped off their clothes and they went they decided to go swimming at the pump, but as they had no swimmers, they stripped off their clothes and went skinny dipping. Stuart saw the pile of clothes, and so he sneaked up and stole them. When the girls decided to come back to the house, about 300 metres away, they had to make a naked dash for the nearest shed, where Gwen found an old suitcase. She wrapped the open suitcase around herself and stormed into the kitchen, demanding back the clothes that Stuart had stolen. Gwen would spend hours on the phone with her sisters, aunties and cousins, and I mean hours. She loved spending time with them on special occasions or just socialising with the far-reaching Anderson clan. Christmas at the Bullers, Boxing Day at the river with Scots, trips to Collyambly or wherever or whenever there were relatives. The kids would play and the ladies would socialise. The family was spread far and wide. Even in Gwen's last 3 weeks, one of the nurses who attended her in hospital on the Gold Coast was Lisa Bailey, niece of Brian and Libby. It was a lovely connection and they were able to chat about Leeton and familiar topics. Gwen never threw anything out. I have many of her dresses and I'm wearing one of them today, probably from the 1950s. I would be reminded that I should be wearing stockings, beads and lipstick. I wore lipstick. It didn't matter what conditions things were in. When she said she would say, "Someone might want that," and it had to be kept. As her old fridge was being removed after a new one had arrived, she was trying to convince the delivery men that there was nothing wrong with the fridge and one of them could have it. All the while, they were trying to stop the door from falling off it while they wheeled it out of the house. It no longer kept things cold, but according to Gwen, it was still a good fridge. Gwen had a sweet tooth and enjoyed baking. She enjoyed all dairy products, anything with butter, milk and especially cream. We always had pudding with our evening meal, including junket, rice pudding, egg custard, golden syrup dumplings with cream or custard, or both. Everything was better with cream. Pikelets with jam and cream, toast with jam and cream, or condensed milk. I thought condensed milk was something you only ate from a can with a spoon. Cream puffs, lamingtons, butterfly cakes and sponge cakes with jam and cream were some of her baked goods. Christmas dessert always included the obligatory fruit set in coloured jelly, trifle, pavlova with alamander pie filling and cream, of course, and always the favourite sultana cake. She made those cakes for us for years when we left home, and more recently, one of us made her the same recipe for Christmas each year. There's a photo of her eating a piece last Christmas on the back of the booklet. She used her mother's rich fruit cake recipe to bake our 21st and wedding cakes. A while back, Mum decided she would get me a cake for my birthday. When I went to blow out the candles on the jam and cream sponge that she had bought me, she told me she knew I couldn't eat it, but wanted to get me a birthday cake. I'm celiac. But it was her favourite cake, so that's what I got. Even until her last night at home, Gwen insisted on having some Werther's caramels and some milk chocolate in a dish by her bed every evening so she could enjoy them during the night. Each morning, lolly wrappers and remnants of melted chocolate were all that was left of her midnight snack, and yet she was adamant she had not been the one who consumed them. In fact, her story was that we hadn't even given her any. The risk of breaking a tooth was only briefly considered, but soon outweighed by the pleasure of the midnight treat, but by someone else, it seems. My friend Susan Hain, daughter of Mum's friend Jeannie Alexander, remembers, "I'd never had an omelette like your mum made in the big fry pan. They were the best. And staying at Brobner Road calling the cows and the frozen toilet in the winter." My husband was amazed at Gwen's ingenuity when it came to cooking the evening meal. He was amazed to learn that the number of saucepans you could use at once on the stovetop was not limited to the number of hot plates it had. Gwen also enjoyed a cup of tea, or two, each morning, and many more throughout the day. Our dad greeted her every morning with a cup of tea in bed, and she really missed that morning ritual when he passed away. Woe betide the Anglicare worker who did not put the correct amount of sugar into her tea or the right amount of milk. It had to be the perfect temperature, and none could get out the door until they had made her a second cup. Nicole commented that even in her last days spent in hospital, she would nod and her head and smile when offered a cup of tea. That simple pleasure meant so much to her, and if it was made by those of us who knew exactly how she liked it, she would say, "That's a nice cup of tea." Her son-in-law Andrew would make her a cuppa and ask if she enjoyed it. Her response, "What's not to like?" Well, there was something she didn't like. Gwen did not like beards or moustaches. She asked Les and my son-in-law Rowan, "What do you want that for? When are you going to shave that off?" She questioned who would want to kiss them. It would be like kissing a chook's bottom. But they wondered how she knew what it was like to kiss a chook's bottom. Gwen enjoyed going to Macca's for a vanilla thick shake and fries. It didn't matter if she were unwell, she was always keen for that treat. Whenever she needed to go to her GP, she always had to be taken home via McDonald's drive-through for her favourite menu items. My daughter Joanna told me that when she was staying at Grandma's and cooking herself some dinner after university, Mum said, "Why don't you cook some chips?" Jo mentioned that they had already been eating quite a lot of chips together that week, and so she said she shouldn't. Gwen wouldn't take no for an answer, declaring, "We were born to be naughty." So chips were cooked. It seemed that the rules for grandchildren were very different to those applied to us. She also enjoyed barbecue chicken, which was her favourite go-to for visitors or when visiting others, and it provided a variety of serving options. Mum and Dad travelled Australia and the world, beginning when we were in high school and continuing up into their 80s. Dad was never one to sit still or let life pass him by, and Mum had no choice but to keep up or be left behind. But I never heard her complain about any of the holidays. She often mentioned Canada as her favourite place to visit. I have many more stories I could tell, including the ones about the snake in the toilet and about Gwen wanting us to drive her in our car back to Leeton for burial. I'm sure many of you would also have some memorable tales to tell. Hopefully, we can share some memories and continue to celebrate Gwen's life afterwards over a nice cup of tea and something sweet, maybe with cream on it. In Gwen's words, what's not to like about that?
Thank you very much. So now we're going to hear the recording of Somewhere Over the Rainbow.
up high, and the dreams that you dream of once in a lullaby. Oh, somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly, and the dreams that you dream of, dreams really do come true. Ooh, someday you wish upon a star, wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where trouble melts like lemon drops, high above the chimney top. That's where you find me. Oh, somewhere over the rainbow, bluebirds fly, and the dreams that you dare to, oh why can't well, I see trees of green and red roses too. I watch them bloom for me and you, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Well, I see skies of blue, and I see clouds of white, and the brightness of day. I like the dark, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people passing by. I see friends shaking hands, singing, how do you do? They really say, I love you. I hear babies cry, and I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than we'll know, and I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Someday I wish upon a star, wake up where the clouds are far behind me, where trouble melts like a lemon drops, high above the chimney top. That's where you find me. Oh, somewhere over the rainbow, way up high, and the dreams that you dare to, why, oh why can't
Andrew's going to share now a poem, A Life Well Lived.
I'm one of the bearded ones, apparently. It's funny what you learn up here on days like this, because I knew Gwen wasn't overly taken by the beard once I started to grow it. I got reminded of that, but the bit about kissing a chook's bum, I wasn't aware of that. Les, were you aware of This piece of poetry is titled A Life Well Lived. A life well lived is a precious gift of hope and strength and grace from someone who has made our world a brighter, better place. It's filled with moments sweet and sad, with smiles and sometimes tears, with friendships formed and good times shared and laughter through the years. A life well lived is a legacy of joy and pride and pleasure, a living, lasting memory of our grateful hearts will treasure.
Thank you, Andrew. Now we're going to have some memories of Nick, Gwen's husband, from Kristen.
Good morning. Born 9th of July 1925 to Emily and Arthur. Although his name was Kenneth Austin James, he was known to most as Nick. I hope you don't mind. It's so weird calling him Nick, so I hope you don't mind. I'm just going to say Pop. He insisted that this was in reference to St. Nicholas, and yet his mother maintained him as Nick the Devil. Pop relished in his childhood here in Leeton, spending most of his time having fun and playing mischievous pranks on his brothers, such as tainting his brother's dinner with unpleasant ingredients. As a child, he had a keen interest in planes and trains and aspired to enter into the aircraft industry as an airplane propeller. As a young adult, he pursued an active interest in many sports such as baseball, football, and golf. He helped introduce locals to water skiing on the main canal while being towed by a speeding truck using homemade skis. Later in life, he would serve as the Leeton Golf Club president for many years. At 18 years, Pop joined the RAF as a radar operator and was posted to the 154 Radar Truscott in the Kimberley region of the Northern Territory. His diary entries documented a diverse range of activities, such as his postings and exploits like dynamite fishing in the local waterways with his good mate Blue. Gonna go off script for a minute here. And I actually remember a story that he told both my brother and I when we were kids, and he showed us the photo because he was ever so proud of this. He'd show us this photo of this toilet or cubicle, and we would ask, what's so good about that? And he goes, well, I blew this one up. And we both looked at him like, what? And needless to say, his response was because he got bored. In 1946, he was discharged from the RAF and he returned back here to Leeton. It was here that Nick met Grandma, Gwen Buller, whilst attending her 21st birthday. Some time had passed, and after 5 years, he proposed to his beloved Gwen. Leaning over the fence, Pop found her milking the cow and proclaimed, "You have to marry me, Gwen." She replied, "I'll think about it." That does sound like Grandma. On July 7th, 1956, Pop and Grandma were married at this very site in the Presbyterian church. Pop and Grandma went on to start a family by having 3 children, or 3 daughters. He was a loving husband and a devoted father. He would take the family on many holidays across the country and was well known for his precise planning, which Mum has inherited, and would pack a car with surgical precision, while Grandma would prepare for the trip by making egg sandwiches and cooking a slice. Once the three girls grew up and moved away, Pop and Grandma enjoyed their time travelling across Australia, Canada and Europe. In 1991, Pop and Grandma retired to the Gold Coast. Pop made himself well known to the people in the street. He was always ready with a friendly conversation and would always lend a hand where it was needed. He was given the title of the Mayor of Waitomo Street by the neighbours. He made many lasting friendships on the Gold Coast. Both Pop and Grandma enjoyed many happy years there. Every morning, as you would have heard, Auntie Suzanne mentioned before, he would prepare a cup of tea for Grandma, whilst his wife would sit and enjoy this tea. Pop would then be sitting out on his milk crate at the front of the shed, enjoying the sun and watching the world go by. He was also a devoted grandfather, and I will continue to cherish and honour the fond memories that I had growing up with both Pop and Grandma. I remember as a child, Grandma, wherever she may be in the house, whether it was in the kitchen cooking or in the lounge room watching or having a conversation, Pop would be not too far away mimicking her. And both my brother and I would be absolutely hysterical laughing. And as time progressed forward, both Pete and I would start to copy him and point fingers, you're the one that's in trouble. He was so mischievous, our Pop, and so was our grandmother. Pop had a very soft side to him though. He would often get Grandma a bunch of flowers on his way home, native ones to be precise. Well, from what I saw, they were native flowers on his way home from his job at the Carrara markets. Pop had a lot of patience too. I remember many times we would be going up to the shops. It was called Pacific Fair. And it would be Pop, Pete and I in the car waiting for Grandma. And I remember one day perhaps I was getting a little impatient, but I said to him, I said, Pop, what is she doing? And I said, she'll just be putting some lipstick on her cheeks. Sure enough, he was right. She was so prim and proper. I'll be forever thankful that both Pop and Grandma taught both my brother and I so much knowledge growing up. Pop would teach me how to mow, which I'll add, I'm still no good at mowing the lawn. And he would teach me the mechanics of my car and how not to close the door so hard because it will break. And he also taught me other things like fishing, and Mum would often take us down every Friday after school, because we were fortunate enough to do little nippers down at Karawa. And some of those times, perhaps Mum may have been a bit tired to take us, but Pop stepped in and took us along. And I think he enjoyed it. Grandma, well, she taught me cooking, she taught me etiquette. She also broke up a lot of fights between my brother and I, because there was one particular chair we'd always fight over. And in fact, in his last year, he actually sent me a photo of a very similar chair that he saw on one of his work sites. And we both just laughed. And of course, I can't forget Grandma also taught us where the lolly jar was every time. So we knew exactly where to go in that cupboard every time we got to the house, even though Mum would say no. Rules were out the door when we were there. She had so much love to give, Grandma, and she surely did that. She gave us and all her love. In the last handful of years, her short-term memory wasn't the best, but her long-term was amazing. We would often talk about her life, her mum, Pop, of course, my mum and her siblings, and her travels with Pop would always bring that big, gentle smile to her face. And I know growing up as a child, just watching them and their marriage was definitely something that I just looked up to, that this is rare, this type of marriage that they had. And it was a beautiful one at that. We went on so many adventures with them. We went on plenty of hikes, and particularly my favourite would be at O'Reilly's. We would explore the local landscapes. And for all that I've mentioned today and all of the memories that I hold very close to our heart, I'll be forever grateful. They were the most beautiful grandparents that anyone could ask for. In their later years, they both had time in 2008 to enjoy some time with their first great-grandson, Corbin. They were very lucky. And they just doted on him. Like, again, I could finally understand Mum's frustrations with rules. Mine went out that window as soon as he came along. And of course, he could do no wrong in their eyes. Unfortunately, Pop didn't get the chance to meet the further 5 great-grandchildren who would come along years later. But Grandma loved being involved, and she loved each of them deeply. Thank you.
Thank you for those precious memories. We're now going to hear the recording, What a Wonderful World.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I never knew. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Oh, yeah.
Cole now is going to share a poem.
A Scots Farewell. When I come to the end of the road and the sun has set for me, I want no tears in a gloom-filled room. Why cry for a soul set free? Miss me a little, but not for long, and not with your head bowed low. Remember the love that we once shared. Miss me, but let me go. For this is a journey we all must take, and each must go alone. It's all a part of the master plan, a step on the road to home. When you are lonely and sick at heart, go to the friends we know and bury your sorrow in doing good deeds. Miss me, but let me go.
Thank you. In the Bible, in a verse written probably 3,000 years ago by King Solomon, it simply says that there is a time to be born and a time to die. And that's a truth we all know and share. So I didn't know Gwen, so what I share briefly is a reflection of what the family shared with me the other night. At this time, I would also like to say that I consider it an honour to have been asked to be part of this service. In the poem just read to us by Nicole, in the 4th verse is the line, "For this is a journey we all must take and each must go alone." And that's true, but there is a hope that is given to us through the Christian faith, that this journey is not the final end, and that there is another life which begins at the end of this earthly one. Banjo Patterson's poem, Over the Range, ends with these lines. But we know that God has this gift in store, that when we come to the final change, we shall meet with our loved ones gone before, to the beautiful country over the range. And I believe in these lines there is a truth, a hope, that is especially meaning for us here today. For on the 7th of July in 1956, Gwen and Nick Eckley were married in what was then St Andrew's Presbyterian Church, which is now the church hall behind us. On that day, Gwen and Nick began a married life together. They shared the building of a family and a family home. And we can hold on to the comfort that now they are once more together again in that beautiful country over the range. I well remember many years ago at my own father's funeral, a cousin saying to me as words of comfort that my father's life had been a good life lived well. And I believe the same could be said for the life of Gwendoline Eckley. A good life lived well, and to quote the poem that Andrew read earlier, someone who has made our world a brighter and better place. And that's no small thing, for what makes a community, indeed a nation, strong are people like Gwen and Nick who build homes and families, who are part of a community. And it can be very easy to forget just how blessed we are in Australia, in this place of Leeton and beyond, that this is a wonderful place that we live in. And it's made possible in reality through the selfless work of people like Gwen, who just did their best day by day to live a good life and live it well. I would like to finish by quoting a favourite author of mine, J.R.R. Tolkien. And he said, "I have found that it is the small everyday deeds of ordinary folk that keep the darkness at bay. They're small acts of kindness and love. So we're now coming to the conclusion of this service. May we give thanks for wonderful memories, and may they be a comfort in our times of grief. I also like to remind you that the family are inviting you to join them for refreshments at 12:30 at the Hydro Hotel. And now I will pronounce the benediction. Now may the grace of the Lord Jesus Christ, the love of God the Father, and the fellowship of the Holy Spirit be with each and every one of you, both now and for all eternity. Amen.
I see trees of green, red roses too. I see them bloom for me and you. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. I see skies of blue and clouds of white, the bright blessed day, the dark sacred night. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. The colors of the rainbow, so pretty in the sky, are also on the faces of people going by. I see friends shaking hands, saying, how do you do? They're really saying, I love you. I hear babies cry, I watch them grow. They'll learn much more than I never knew. And I think to myself, what a wonderful world. Yes, I think to myself, what a wonderful world.